when I was growing up, I heard a lot of Native American stories from my grandmother in New Mexico. Now, she was Choctaw from Oklahoma, but coming to New Mexico, she heard the stories of the Pueblo and the Navajos, and these are the stories she shared with us. Now, the story I'm going to tell you is not about the sun never setting. It's about a time when there was no sun. The Choctaws say that when the people first came up out of the ground, they were encased in cocoons, their arms tightly folded to their bodies and their eyes closed. And this was true of all the people, the bird people, the animal people, the insect people, and the human people. The Creator took pity on them, and he sent someone down to unfold their limbs and dry them off and to open their eyes. But even with their eyes open, they could not see because their world was all darkness. There was no sun, there was no moon, not even the light from stars to see by. And the people all stumbled about in that darkness. And when they would bump into one another, they would say, "My brother, what this world needs is light." And the other would say, "Indeed, brother, we do need light." And finally, they called a council, and everyone gathered together as well as they could in the darkness to talk about how they could bring light to their world. Now, the birds and the animals took the lead, while the humans hung back. The red-headed woodpecker spoke out first. "I have heard that over on the other side of the world, there are people who have light." "Ah, this is good," said everyone. "Yes," said the woodpecker. "Perhaps if we go over there, they would give us some." The fox spoke. "If they have all the light there is, then they must be greedy people. I say we go over there and take it from them." And everyone agreed. But then they began arguing about who should go. Well, who was the fastest? Who was the bravest? Who was the smartest? Who was the best able to go and get the light? Possum was the first to step forward. "I'll go. Now, I have a fine, big, bushy tail, and I can put the light inside the fur of my tail." "Oh, this is good," said everyone. And so Possum set out. Now, as he traveled eastward, the light began to grow brighter and brighter and brighter until it dazzled his eyes, and he had to squinch his eyes up very tightly to keep out the brightness. In fact, if you look at possums today, you'll see that their eyes are almost shut. And of course, possums do not come out during the day, but only in the dark of night. But this possum, he kept going all the way to the other side of the world. And there he found the sun. Well, he reached up and he grabbed a big piece of that sun and he put it in the fur of his fine, big, bushy tail. And Possum started off for home. But that piece of sun was hot, and Possum's tail started smoking. Possum started running fast, but that tail burst into flames. And by the time Possum got home, all the fur on his tail was burned off, and he was left with a tail as bare as it is today. "Our brother has lost his fine, big, bushy tail, but well, still we have no light." The buzzard stepped forward. "Well, flap, I'll go. Shoot, now I have more sense than to put the sun on my tail. I'll put it on my head." And so Buzzard set off for the land of the sun-keeping people. Now, Buzzard flies so high that the sun-keeping people did not see him, although they were now on the lookout for thieves. And Buzzard dove straight down out of the sky, just like he does today, and he grabbed a piece of sun in his claws and put it on his head, and he started for home. piece of sun. It was so hot that Buzzard's face started turning red. The feathers on his head started smoking, and Buzzard started flapping faster and faster, but by the time he got home, all the feathers on his head were burned off, and he was left with his head as red, bald, and blistered as it is today. That is why all buzzards today have those bare heads. Well, now the people were in despair. What shall we do? What can we do? Our brothers have done everything, and still we have no light. A little voice spoke from the ground. They have done everything that a man can do, but perhaps this is something that a woman can do. The people looked all around. Who is that? Who is that speaking in that little voice from the ground? Ah, it is I, your grandmother Spider. Perhaps I was put upon this earth to bring you light. Who knows? At least I can try. And if I am burned up, oh, it is not as if one of your great warriors is lost. And so saying, Grandmother Spider felt about her in the darkness and gathered up some damp clay. And she formed and shaped a little clay bowl. She started eastward, spinning a thread behind her so she could find her way back home and carrying that bowl. Now, when she came to the land of the sun-keeping people, she was so little, she was so quiet that no one saw her. And she reached up and took just a tiny piece of the sun and put it in her bowl. And then she started back home, carrying that bowl and following the thread she had spun. The light in that bowl started growing and spreading as she traveled from east to west, the same direction that our sun travels in today. And I'm sure you've noticed that the spider's web, well, it's shaped like the sun's disk in its rays. And of course, Spider spins that web very early in the morning before the sun is up. When Grandmother Spider returned, the people were so grateful. They were so thankful. They told her, Grandmother Spider, we will always remember you and we will always honor you. And Grandmother Spider taught the people about spinning and weaving and about making pottery. The people learned that you must always let that pottery, the clay, dry slowly in the shade before it's placed in the firing oven, just as Grandmother Spider's bowl dried slowly in her hands as she traveled through the darkness to the land of the sun.